A SEAL? Your mom? Seriously, Leo? The voice of Cadet Senior Grade, Caldwell, echoed with practiced condescension across the polished floor of the West Point Simulation Center. Look at her. She looks like she organizes bake sales, not clandestine raids. The cluster of senior cadets around him erupted in a wave of cruel, sycophantic laughter. They were the Academy's elite, or so they believed, their crisp gray uniforms a mantle of assumed superiority. Their target, Cadet Leo Morgan, stood ramrod straight, his face a mask of disciplined fury, his knuckles white where he gripped the strap of his duffel bag. His mother, Elena, stood a few feet away, ostensibly examining a display case of historical ordnance. She was a woman of unassuming presence, dressed in simple slacks and a plain blue blouse, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She seemed to be the very definition of unremarkable, a stark contrast to the preening, uniformed peacocks holding court. But as the laughter washed over her son, she didn't flinch. She didn't turn. Her only reaction was a slow, deliberate breath, a moment of stillness in the swirling vortex of adolescent arrogance. What the cadets, in their youthful blindness, failed to see was the universe of experience held within that calm. They did not notice how her eyes, even while appearing to read a plaque, scanned the entire room, mapping exits, assessing personnel, and noting the subtle security measures. They didn't see the faint, silvery lines of a faded trident tattoo peeking from beneath her watch band. And they certainly didn't see the four-star Admiral who had just entered the gallery, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Elena, a flicker of profound recognition crossing his weathered features. If you believe true respect is earned in silence, not shouted from the rooftops, type legacy below. The humiliation, however, was not over. Caldwell, fueled by the attention of his peers, took a step closer to Leo. Family Day is about pride, Morgan. Pride in the uniform, pride in the legacy. What are you bringing? Fabricated stories to make yourself look interesting? My father was a colonel. Harris's father commands a carrier strike group. Your mother, what? Ran the PDA. The insults were a carefully crafted performance, designed to dismantle Leo's standing among the underclassmen who watched with a mixture of fear and nervous fascination. The instructors, busy calibrating the day's final demonstration, were oblivious to the small, brutal drama unfolding in the gallery. To them, it was just the usual friction of the Academy's rigid hierarchy. Elena remained a statue of tranquility. Her silence was a canvas onto which the cadets painted their own assumptions: embarrassment, shame, weakness. They mistook her profound self-control for a lack of response, her discipline for meekness. Her quiet was not an absence of words, but a containment of force they could not possibly comprehend. From the far side of the room, Admiral Jennings watched the scene with a tightening jaw. He knew that look. He had seen it before in the dust of Kandahar, in the tense quiet of a ready room before a mission from which some would not return. It was the calm of a professional who had been tested beyond the breaking point and had not broken. It was the stillness of someone who knew, with absolute certainty, what they were capable of, and therefore felt no need to announce it. He began to move slowly, deliberately, his path taking him along the periphery, a silent observer closing in on the heart of the matter. The main event for the families was a demonstration of the Academy's new crown jewel, the Ares tactical simulation. An instructor with a booming voice announced the scenario: a complex hostage rescue mission within a simulated embassy compound. It was notoriously difficult, a program affectionately nicknamed the Meat Grinder by cadets. No team had successfully completed it on the first try. It's a no-win scenario, the instructor explained with a hint of pride, designed to test leadership under impossible pressure. Caldwell puffed out his chest. My team will run it, sir. We'll be the first to clear it. He shot a smug look at Leo. Maybe your SEAL mom could take notes on how real operators work. The room buzzed with anticipation. Caldwell's team, comprised of the same arrogant seniors, strapped themselves into the VR rigs. They were confident, loud, and utterly unprepared for the brutal efficiency of the simulation's AI. Their entry was a mess of uncoordinated movements and shouted commands. They breached the first door and were immediately cut down by a crossfire they never saw coming. Mission failed. The main screen blared in stark red letters. An embarrassed silence fell. The instructor sighed. As I said, it's about learning from failure. Anyone else want to give the families a show? The question was rhetorical, a verbal shrug. The room was quiet. Then a voice, calm and clear, cut through the silence. I will. Every head turned. It was Elena Morgan. A fresh wave of snickering rippled through the cadets. Caldwell scoffed audibly. Is this a joke? The instructor, a young captain, looked annoyed. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a highly advanced system for trained personnel. He was about to dismiss her when he saw Admiral Jennings, now standing directly behind him, give a short, almost imperceptible nod. The captain's demeanor changed instantly. Yes, ma'am. Of course, ma'am. He gestured to the open rig. The equipment is calibrated for standard-issue gear. Elena walked to the station, her movements economical and precise. She picked up the simulation rifle, a weighted haptic feedback model of an M4. The cadets watched, expecting her to fumble with it. Instead, her hands moved with a familiar, fluid grace that was utterly mesmerizing. She didn't just hold the rifle. She became one with it. She checked the magazine, tested the weight, and brought the stock to her shoulder in a single, seamless motion. Her stance shifted. Her center of gravity lowered. The unassuming woman in the blue blouse vanished, replaced by something else, something harder and infinitely more dangerous. The quiet confidence she projected was a physical force, sucking the air and the idle chatter from the room. The laughter died in Caldwell's throat, replaced by a dawning, uncomfortable confusion. This was not the posture of a bake sale organizer. This was the practiced, lethal grace of a predator. Elena slipped on the VR headset and the main screen flickered to life, showing her first-person perspective. The simulation began. The digital embassy corridor stretched before her. Unlike Caldwell's team, she didn't rush. She moved with a patient, deliberate flow, her rifle sight tracing arcs of responsibility, clearing corners with a technique the cadets had only read about in advanced infantry manuals, the concept of slicing the pie. There were no wasted steps, no hesitation. Her progress was a masterclass in tactical ballet. She encountered the first pair of hostiles. There was no wild spray of automatic fire. Just two distinct sounds, pop, pop, and two digital targets dropped, each with a single precise shot to the virtual head. She moved on, her breathing steady and rhythmic in the simulation's audio feed. She used the environment, ricocheting a flashbang off a wall to blind enemies in a room she hadn't even entered yet. She was a ghost in the machine, flowing through the level with an eerie prescience, anticipating traps and ambushes as if she had designed the program herself. The control room was utterly silent, the only sound the soft hum of the computers and the crisp audio from Elena's feed. The cadets watched, their faces transforming from skepticism to disbelief, and finally, to a state of pure, unadulterated awe. She reached the final room, where 3 hostiles held a single hostage. In a blur of motion too fast to properly track, she dropped the 2 guards and put a final, disabling shot into the leader's weapon hand, saving the hostage. The screen flashed green. Mission complete. All hostiles neutralized. 0 friendly/civilian casualties. A deafening silence descended upon the room. Caldwell, his face pale, could only whisper the 2 words that summed up the collective shock. That's impossible. Out of the stunned stillness, Admiral Jennings stepped forward. The crisp sound of his leather shoes on the floor was like a gavel striking wood. Every cadet, every instructor snapped to a rigid posture of attention, their eyes locked forward. The Admiral ignored them all. He walked directly to the simulation rig, where Elena was removing her headset, her expression as placid as it had been in the gallery. He stopped 2 feet in front of her. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply looked at her, his eyes conveying a message of shared history and profound respect that no words could capture. Then, slowly, With a formality that stunned the onlookers, he raised his right hand to the brim of his cover in a sharp, perfect salute. The four-star Admiral was saluting the civilian woman in the blue blouse. "Commander Morgan." His voice was a low rumble of authority that filled every corner of the room. "It's good to see you're still keeping sharp." The title hung in the air, a bombshell of confusion for the cadets. The Admiral turned his head slightly, his gaze falling upon the bewildered captain. "Instructor," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Pull up the unclassified service record for Commander Elena Morgan, United States Navy, retired. Display it on the main screen." Now the captain, his hands trembling slightly, scrambled to the console, the clicking of the keyboard the only sound in a world that had suddenly stopped spinning. The instructor typed in the name, his fingers fumbling over the keys under the immense pressure of the Admiral's gaze. A personnel file blinked onto the massive screen, the one that moments before had displayed Elena's impossible tactical victory. The heading was stark: Morgan, Elena. Rank, Commander, Ret. The narrator's voice could have been reading the file aloud, a staccato litany of undeniable proof that systematically dismantled every ignorant assumption the cadets had ever held. Unit designation: Naval Special Warfare Development Group. The whispers started in the back, a horrified, awestruck murmur. "DevGru," another cadet breathed it. "That's SEAL Team 6", the file scrolled. "Specialization: Counterterrorism, Direct Action, Hostage Rescue." The irony was a physical blow. The very scenario she had just flawlessly executed was not a game to her. It was her life's work. Combat deployments: classified, classified, classified. Citations and awards: Navy Cross, the second highest award for valor in combat. Silver Star, Bronze Star with V for Valor, Purple Heart with 2 gold stars, indicating she had been wounded in action 3 separate times. The list went on, a testament to a career spent in the darkest corners of the world, performing acts of courage they could barely imagine. The camera of the mind would have zoomed in on Caldwell's face. The arrogance had been sandblasted away, leaving behind the raw, gaping expression of a boy who had just insulted a living legend. The foundation of his world, built on lineage and loud proclamations, had crumbled into dust. He wasn't just wrong, he was a fool. And he knew, with sickening certainty, that everyone in the room knew it too. The story of what happened in the Ares Simulation Center spread through the academy not like wildfire, but like a shockwave. It wasn't loud gossip shouted in the mess hall. It was a series of quiet, reverent conversations in the barracks late at night. The tale of Caldwell's folly, or the Morgan Run, became an instant piece of institutional folklore. It was a cautionary tale about assumptions, a brutal lesson in humility delivered not by a lecture, but by a demonstration of pure, unassailable competence. The video file of Elena's simulation run was quietly circulated among the cadets, studied with the same intensity as historical battles. Her movements were analyzed, her tactics debated. She became a ghost, a legend, a new benchmark against which all of them would be measured. The day after the event, a deeply humbled Caldwell sought out Leo Morgan during morning formation. He didn't approach with his usual entourage. He came alone. He stood before Leo, snapped to attention, and delivered a stiff, formal apology. "Morgan," he said, his voice stripped of all its previous arrogance, "my conduct yesterday was unbecoming of a cadet and an officer. I was wrong. My assumptions were baseless and disrespectful. Please convey my deepest apologies to your mother." Leo, who had endured the ridicule in silence, simply looked at him and nodded once. He understood that the apology wasn't just for him. It was for the ideal they were all supposed to represent. When he later told his mother what Caldwell had said, Elena simply nodded, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. She was adjusting the strap on her watch, the trident hidden once more. For her, this was nothing new. True competence always, eventually, silences the noise. In the weeks and months that followed, the culture at the academy underwent a subtle but significant shift. The instructors, with the Admiral's blessing, officially renamed the hostage rescue simulation. It was now known as the Morgan Protocol. The recording of Elena's run became mandatory viewing for all cadets in their first year, a foundational lesson not just in small unit tactics, but in the ethos of the quiet professional. The lesson was simple and profound. Your resume is not what you say you've done. It is what you can do, right here, right now. The story was used by senior officers to teach the most vital of all leadership traits: the wisdom to recognize expertise in any form, regardless of appearance, gender, or rank. The photo of Elena, a candid shot of her calmly observing the display case before the simulation began, was anonymously pinned to the main bulletin board in the cadet commons. Beneath it, someone had written a single word. Standard. It became a touchstone, a reminder that the most formidable warriors are often the ones you would never notice. Leo Morgan walked the halls of West Point with a new sense of gravity. The change wasn't in him, but in how he was perceived. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, not born of his mother's reflected glory, but from a deep, personal understanding of where her strength came from. It came from discipline. It came from sacrifice. It came from a profound humility forged in crucibles the world would never know. Years later, Admiral Jennings would stand before a new class of bright-faced, nervous plebeians, the future leaders of the nation's military. He would tell them a story of the unassuming woman in the blue blouse. He wouldn't use her name. He didn't have to. The legend was now part of the Academy's DNA. "Look around you," he would say, his voice resonating with hard-won wisdom. "The most dangerous person in this room is not the loudest. It is not the one with the most famous last name or the most impressive physique. The most dangerous person, the one you should aspire to be, is the one who has nothing to prove to you, because they have already proven everything to themselves. Her legacy was not in the medals locked away in a box or the classified mission reports gathering dust in a secure vault. Her legacy was in the silence that now followed a boastful claim in the barracks. It was in the moment of hesitation a senior cadet felt before judging a subordinate on appearances. It was in the quiet, methodical dedication of young men and women who now understood that true worth is not proclaimed, it is demonstrated. Elena Morgan never sought fame or recognition. She sought only to be competent, to be ready. Her actions that day were not a performance. They were simply an expression of who she was. True legacy is not a story you leave behind. It is a standard that moves forward. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent professionalism defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.